The sutta goes on to narrate that the Brahmin also commanded, or to give the command of the Brahmin on the Buddha's living in the forest, and the Brahmin said, yeah, isn't it a difficult life to live alone? Isn't it difficult to bear? Huh? And the Buddha also confirmed, yes. And then he went on to reflect on his own struggle as a human being. That part is very touching and very that itself is a case in point about inspiration. You know, you look at the life of the Buddha, you feel so inspired. Is it because the Buddha now shares with us, as it were, that actually he went through all this as an ordinary human being? He reflected that when he was a bodhisattva before he was enlightened, he also felt anxiety and fear within himself. Now this touches the biggest human problem now. That's what we are experiencing as human beings. The very, very fundamental type of fear. No, it's no more like fear of cockroaches or mouse. Not like that. It's a fear that comes from the midst of your heart, as it were, even in a very comfortable situation. You see, when you're quiet, when you're alone, or due to certain circumstances, suddenly fear is sparkled within you. You feel a sense of very, very deep fundamental sense of insecurity. You seem to have lost the direction of your life. And today, people talk so much about, people are so obsessed about depression. Now, depression is, if you like, is a manifestation of this kind of fundamental anxiety. So, the Buddha, as an unenlightened being, also went through that. He reflected, he admitted, he shared with us, yes. I also reflected that, and I saw this fear in myself also. Then he also compared his experience of fear to the experience of other recluses and Brahmins, and he realized that in their case there is a difference, particularly of course in the days after the Buddha's enlightenment. The contrast becomes clear. The commentary seems to think that even as a bodhisattva, the psychological conditions of the bodhisattva was one of positivity in contrast to other Brahmins. But anyway, it is clear that the contrast between the type of fear that arises in anyone who is psycho-spiritually deficient, I might put it that way. The Buddha said, for instance, that Buddha analyzes about 16 conditions that invoke fear. Some Brahmins, some novices, some recluses experience fear because they are impure in their physical conduct, or impure in their speech, or impure in their thoughts, or because they are overwhelmed by the 5 hindrances, including craving, greed, animosity, delusions, and also sometimes because of the desire for reputation, recognition, the question of ego, I must be famous, I must be recognized, I must be praised. So all these are psychological, what we can summarize as psycho-spiritual negativities. Now because of this, Buddha is explaining that it's because of the presence of these psycho-spiritual negativities, even, that's an interesting point, even in the recluses and the Brahmins, even in people whose life are devoted, to a religious ideal. Because of these negative conditions, they invoke fear. And the commentary explains that in fact, fear, the point is made very clearly that fear is something that is superimposed on you. The example is given that if someone has killed somebody, has done some wrong act like this, and if the person goes to the forest, even if he can go to the forest, away from society, he cannot avoid that fear. He cannot escape from that fear. When he sits down, he begins to think, well, people whom I have wronged must be coming near to me. They're going to buy me up. They're going to destroy me. And fear comes to that person. So it's not a question of escaping. It's not possible to escape, from outside conditions. It's a question of overcoming your inner condition of psycho-spiritual deficiencies. Then the sutta goes on to narrate the Buddha's own struggle. And that also is another point that we made in the last two lectures, that the sutra is significant because it's in the form of autobiography. The Buddha is explaining to us how he himself went through the struggle against his problems and how he overcome his problems, how he succeeded. That's what we want to learn. That's what that's where we can gain inspiration from. So the sutta goes on to narrate that the Buddha reflected, let me face my fear instead of escaping from it. The solution is not escaping it. The solution is to see how fear comes to me, how fear is something that is superimposed on me. Actually, there's one word that in Pali, in the commentary, that is samaropana. For those who are familiar with Yogacara, you can see that this term, a corresponding term in Sanskrit also, which explains that we have problems. We suffer. We have problems. We don't see reality as it is because our mind works by, our consciousness works by superimposition, by conceptualization. So the whole point about spiritual training is to bring about transformation within you from inside. Restructure your consciousness, or to face your inner conditions in such a way that your mind come to a state called wisdom, for one of the better translation. We see things directly instead of the mind working dualistically, conceptually, by way of superimposition. That is the solution of our depression, of our problems. So early Buddhism also, you can see, have similar emphasis. Although the wordings may be different, the conceptual wording, the conceptual description, formulation may be different, but it's the same emphasis, that ultimate solution of human anxiety, of human problems, is an inner transformation of consciousness. So we saw the Buddha then understanding this, and then he reflected, do I really have to? And then firstly we saw that he in fact deliberately chose to go to remote places which are terrifying, such as shrines in the park, under the tree and so on, particularly in the common consciousness of the Indians or even of the Asians. And you can see that also, for example, in Chinese we have that kind of collective unconscious, if you like, to borrow a term. That if you go to a shrine in the park or under the tree, that is something that is supernatural and something that can be harming to you and something that is terrifying. So the Buddha decided that let me go to some place like this, and also on very specifically influential, if you like, nights, such as the 14th, the 15th, the 8th, and so on. You see, so the Buddha did that, and then in that kind of situation, he further reflected: do I really have to expect fear all the time? Is it a human problem that we have the mentality of thinking that we necessarily have to have anxiety, have to have a depression? So the first thing is, this shows that the first step in the solution is awareness. That's where mindfulness comes in. That's why we say that mindfulness is the growing point. You see? So you must be aware of the human situation. You must also be aware. The Buddha's understanding is that no, he doesn't have to. But of course then the next question is, how do I proceed to come to a state transcending that fear? So at least to begin with, he is mindful that the fundamental sense of anxiety, fear, insecurity can indeed be transcended. That's what's meant by his insight that he doesn't have to be, a human being doesn't have to be expecting fear. It's not a human necessity. It's a human shortcoming, but that shortcoming can be overcome. It's not an absolute necessity. So that represents a recognition, awareness of the human potential. Yes, within us we have the ability, we have the power, we have the potential to come to higher states, to transcend all these psycho-spiritual negativities that we just talked about, as a result of which we can transcend the fundamental sense of insecurity and fear. So the Buddha then decided that let me face fear when it comes. When you're in the forest, it is said, when the leaf falls down, you get scared. When a little innocent animal comes near you, also you feel fear. So the Buddha subjects himself to the experience of fear in a very raw manner as a human being in that kind of situation. And he decided that he would continue to walk if fear comes to him when he's walking. He will not change a posture. He wouldn't escape it, in other words. He faces it. He wouldn't change his posture into one of sitting or lying down or standing. He will continue to walk until fear goes away. If fear comes to him when he is sitting down, he will continue to sit down. He doesn't change and stand up. Well, in other words, this represents the reminder that we should not we should not escape. We have to face our fundamental sense of insecurity. So Buddha did that, he struggled. And then last night we went on to see that the Buddha declares that beings, ordinary Sramanas and Brahmanas, they are topsy-turvy, perceiving day as night, night as day. But we don't know whether they as suggested by some people, there could have been some, we don't know, deliberate description in this term, and suddenly it's a little bit puzzling why this comment on perceiving day as night, night as day, and how it came in. When you look into the Chinese version, for instance, it simply says that these recluses and Brahmins did not understand the path, day and night. Whereas the Buddha understands the path day and night, understands truth day and night. So there is in the Chinese no mention of this topsy-turviness of perceiving day as night, night as day. But I think perhaps it doesn't look like to me that it's a case of textual corruption or anything like that, but I think there's a point there also. This perceiving day as night and perceiving night as day represents our topsy-turviness, and this is a metaphorical description. The Buddha sees that as a Buddha, when he's enlightened, he is not topsy-turvy. He perceives day as day, perceives night as night. In other words, he has transcended, he has gone beyond topsy-turviness, upside-downness. And here also we see something very interesting. The Buddha very confidently says that if anyone were to speak rightly of a being in the world, a reason in the world, for the benefit, for the welfare of the multitude, a being who is in a state of non-confusion, it is him. That person should be speaking about him, he as the Buddha. Now this is not a statement of arrogance. It's not a statement of egotism. When you see the truth, you declare the truth. The Buddha experienced the truth. He knows that he as the Buddha is the perfected being, is the very one arisen in the world, truly capable of serving the multitude, capable of benefiting, capable of the multitude, capable of bestowing spiritual benefit. So he declares accordingly. Then it goes on to, the sutta goes on to describe the Buddha's struggle.